Hello, is this Pat?
Yeah, Dustin?
This is Dustin. How you doing?
I'm doing good.
Excellent. It's great to be talking with you today.
Yeah, I'm out here in Palm Desert, and it's pretty.
Well, we won't keep you too long then.
No, don't worry about it. It's fine. I have a place here, and it's great. Out in the patio, and won't have anything but lizards in the background. They don't make a lot of noise.
Okay. Well, Pat, let me introduce you to my co-host, Ton.
Hey there, how you doing?
Tom.
Ton, like 2,000 pounds.
Oh, Ton.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you said Ton. Oh, yeah, well, you're in the Midwest.
Yes. There you go. There you have it.
Okay.
Well, great to have you in line here, Patrick. If you're ready to go, we'll get started.
Sure.
All right. Well, you have been in a lot of stuff over the years. Talk to us a bit about how you got into voice acting.
Well, I never thought of it. As a kid, I loved doing characters and performing. And I went into theater like all middle-class kids that want to perform. In those days, they didn't have stand-up. They didn't have improv. You went into theater. So I went all the way through in 6 years as training in college, and I went to Australia to do Shakespeare. And I was there for a couple weeks, and somebody called the theater and said, anybody do a James Cagney accent? And they went, oh, yeah, we have a American in the company now. Because they figure we all sit around in bars and do impressions, right? Ton would go, I'll do my Humphrey Bogart for you, Dustin, then you're Betty Davis, and then I'll do you doing Betty Davis, So I go to this radio station, and I do, this rat dog that was supposed to sound like Jimmy Cagney, and they paid me like $100 American, $75 Australian in those days, and that was the same weekly that I was getting at doing Shakespeare. And I was a lot better frankly, at doing the Jimmy Cagney than Shakespeare. And that sort of got me interested. Oh, they pay for just the voice? So within about 4 years from that point, I was at Hanna-Barbera. And so that's how I started. I got to tell you something funny. About 2 weeks after I did this job doing Jimmy Cagney, I'm in a cab and I'm listening to the radio, and I hear somebody doing a Jimmy Cagney accent on a commercial. I go, that is the worst, and it was me. That was my introduction to my professional voiceover career. It's too bad, we all don't have a country far away from home, so you can be really bad to begin with.
Yeah, you mentioned being at Hanna-Barbera early on, and when you look at your film credits, and some of the work you've done, basically everything throughout the 80s you were involved with in some way, G.I. Joe, and we remember you as Hillbilly Jim on Hulk Hogan's Rock and Wrestling.
Yeah, Hillbilly Jim on Rock and Roll Wrestling. That was Brad Garrett, the 6'8" comedian that was on Everyone Loves Raymond.
Yeah.
That was his first cartoon show too, and James Avery, who did Shredder with me doing Krang for 9 years, and we all started about that same time.
Sure. Yeah, he was the Junkyard Dog. Yeah.
He was Junkyard Dog, and this is really funny. After every line, he'd go, art. No, he'd do his line, and it was like this, right? And he'd start it with art, right? So when his line would come up in the script, just before he'd speak, one of us would go, art, and just annoy him to death. Tease him to death.
That's awesome.
Yeah, a lot. There was so much work, guys, after He-Man hit in '83, because before that, at Hanna-Barbera, like at Scooby-Doo, there were only 13 shows we'd do for the entire year. So we'd go in about May, work till June, and we were done for the whole year. So all of a sudden, He-Man put out cartoons for afternoon shows. That's 5 a week. So the buy went from 13 shows to 65.
Yeah.
And it hit so hard and so powerful that for an era there were 65-episode shows, and they didn't have enough actors to do them. There were only about 20 of us that could do 3 different characters in a 22-and-a-half-minute show. We didn't have guests in those days. They didn't do it. So we were doing 7, 8 different shows a week, and it was quite a ride.
So how does that work exactly when you're providing, 500-600 different voices at the same time? How do you keep it from, not doing a Hillbilly Jim on a Scooby-Doo cartoon, or getting them mixed up?
Well, you don't. I mean, it was so crazy. Like, I remember I auditioned for, I think, the Smurfs, and I was, Guffy the Smurf, I ain't afraid of no cat. And then I had another audition that day for the Littles. Wow, wowie. Or, no, that's see, I'm already getting confused. That was Denver the Last Dinosaur. And I had Slick the Turtle. They were all the same voice. And you never think in auditions, you mean you're going to land one. I landed all three. And they had the same voice. But fortunately, they don't listen, or they didn't watch each other's shows, so no one knew.
Sure.
But generally, how you keep separated is by having technique, where you can change the pitch of your voice, the pitch characteristic, the tempo, faster or slower, the rhythm of the character, the placement in the nose, back of throat, maybe even your chest, and then mouth work, accents and different stuff. So we got really modular. For example, say you have a character like this. Well, he can be Irish, or perhaps he goes to Scotland, then over to Norway, and down to Transylvania, then to Russia. Same character.
Man.
When I got there, I realized that it's skill, but it's also good management.
Sure. So do you have to carry around note cards and that sort of thing to keep it all straight? Or?
Well, we had reference tapes.
Okay.
Some of us would have them on cassette in those days, and before we went in the session in the parking lot, well, what the heck is this voice?
Yeah.
And then we'd reference and be able to go in.
Wow.
And sometimes they'd play us references because, if you have like Brave Star, you have a 65-episode show and you're covering maybe 12 different characters that are irregular or regulars. So you'd have 3 in a show. Well, they'd have reference tapes for us so we could get back in the saddle on the voice.
Well, of course, 80s were a huge time, and then into the 90s, late 80s into the 90s, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles kind of took over everything, and you wound up working on that. Can you tell us a little bit about how that came about?
Well, this is interesting. I replaced the director who gave himself 4 major characters, and the producer, balked at it, called me and said, "Okay, here, I want you to audition for this character." And it was Krang. And I looked at the script that said Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Well, this will never go anywhere. So it said Krang, an evil, bodiless, villainous blob of a brain, but funny. And I went, oh, good. Well, there's nothing in my repertory on that. So you know how I walked you through the 6 elements of character voice: pitch characteristic, tempo, rhythm, placement, mouth work?
Mm-hmm.
That's something I broke down in Australia when I was teaching voice. No one had ever broken a character down before, a character voice. So I just gave a description aspect to each of those 6 elements. He's crafty. Well, I'll give him a high crafty, and low and high range. I'll keep the pitch a little high. I'll make the placement cottony. And I'll undulate like Catherine Hepburn. And then when he gets mad, I'll have him have heartburn, and so he sounds like this. And so I said, okay, I got everything. And he gave me 2 minutes, right, to get ready to go in an audition. And I went, oh, but funny, what am I going to do? Oh, underneath all this, I'll do a Jewish mother. They'll never know. So it came out like, so this is what I get for surrounding myself with idiots. And Krang was born, which is the weirdest voice I think I've ever done. And I did Cousin It, and I've done the Worm Guys on Men in Black. Grande. Even Bob the Twin, which was like this.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, Krang, that was a weird one.
Wow.
Yeah.
So much stuff. It's just unbelievable.
Well, here's the thing. I've been doing this for like 40 years. If I were a plumber, I could switch out your cistern in 2.5 minutes and be impressive, too. You work at a craft long enough, and it sounds so easy when we do it, but there's a lot of failure and success along the way that gets you to the point where you can deliver the goods.
So when you're doing a voice like Krang, or I know you did Baxter Stockman and some of these ones that might be kind of tough on your voice, do you have to do anything to kind of keep that in mind so you don't lose it, or some of those kind of steps that you have to take?
To tell you the truth, you never do anything that hurts, right? You find a way of setting your voice and your vocal cords and the muscles, and so you can do it and not hurt yourself. It sounds like it might hurt, but it doesn't. So you never try anything out with volume. You can try anything, yeah, right. But you don't yell, because that's when you damage yourself.
Sure.
So you slowly try on a voice, and you get it a little stronger. You find the right placement. But the funny thing about Krang, over the years, I take my family on vacation in February, and I'd go to Hawaii. So I'd come back, and then I'd have to do a Krang session, and I'd throw myself in, and twice, guys, I threw my neck out.
Oh.
Because there's certain kinds of, tensions that you hold, one has to hold for that character. Well, I'd forgotten them, and I was too relaxed, and bam.
Wow.
Yeah. But that's unusual, because it was such a strange thing.
You mentioned Krang being kind of the weirdest voice. Would you say he's a favorite of yours that you've done over the years? I know it's probably hard to choose.
Oh, no, it's not hard to choose. I've got 3 favorites. One of them is Krang because of the money.
Sure.
And also because my boys were all about 10, 9, so it was a cultural phenomenon. It was the first time that they really paid attention to what I did. They just figured, they didn't know I did that. I mean, they figured I was just like, when they go by my bunkhouse, they go, it sounds like you have a petting zoo in there. But they took me to school and shared me in chapel, like dad day, career day.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they were sitting in the front, and I whipped out Krang, and all the kids went crazy, and they whipped their heads around to him like, what? It's Dad.
That's awesome.
And then they finally figured out, oh, I see. So that was one favorite. The other favorite I had was doing all the voices on the audiobook version of The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. 93 characters, 34 different dialects.
Whoa.
And I knew that this would be the challenge and maybe the best work of my life because, Carl Malden, the actor who worked with Marlon Brando so long, big tall guy with a big nose, he said about working with Marlon Brando, he said, you can't compete with genius, but it's nice to come up to it. And when you get Mark Twain, you go, okay, here's Tarzan's greatest challenge. And so that was, as far as reviews and critical success, that was one of my favorites. And the third is kind of weird. It's Wildcat from TaleSpin. He was the ignorant but lovable mountain lion that was
Sure.
Baloo's sidekick.
Yeah.
He sounded sort of like, Baloo, is this a range or a banana? I forgot. And the reason why it's a favorite of mine is, first of all, they couldn't find anybody that could do the role because everyone was making him stupid, and because of the way he looked. Well, I thought, how about naive? So he's like a child, and so he came out a little bit like that, right? Well, years later, I started getting emails from psychologists and from kids that were in their 20s that were autistic, Asperger's, severe ADHD, because when they were kids, they'd go to public school where they had resources for their difficulties, their challenges, get brutalized by the kids, come home and watch a cartoon and see a character they felt was challenged or special, you want to call it, and everybody else loving them. And so they really connected with that character. And I'm in touch with kids that are grown up on a regular basis, and that really made it meaningful.
Yeah, that's...
So as far as meaning, that character, because, I'm in the amusement business. And in Greek, amuse means not think. So I'm giving kids a time for where they're not thinking. Right? Well, but this ramped it up to something more important.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Now,
yeah.
And we've talked about, obviously, you've done so many things, and then you talk about, I guess, even finally where the kids were noticing what you were doing. Is that something that ever crossed your mind? Because it seemed like even for us, we didn't know until later on. Now we've talked to many voiceover actors and realizing, like, man, these guys just impacted our lives like every day. They were on every cartoon we ever listened to, but we had no idea in the time. Where it's different, like a movie actor, everyone knows you. Back then, were you pretty much just incognito and doing all this work and thinking, I'm in everyone's head every day?
Well, I knew that I was on, like, at one point in my career, I was on all day long in some show, somewhere. There'd be Glow Friends or all over. When you look at a TV guide in those days, I was on all day long.
Yeah.
And I knew that was happening, but I had no idea of the impact. I did have an inkling of the impact because when I went to Hanna-Barbera, but Hanna-Barbera started in about the late 50s, making cartoons for kids. Before then, it was like Warner Brothers, and it was sort of for adults, and the kids could enjoy them too. Well, this was solely for kids. So here I am, 9 years old, sitting in front of the TV, watching Yogi Bear, Huckleberry Hound, Flintstones, all these shows.
Mm-hmm.
Now I go into Hanna-Barbera and I hear somebody open their mouth, and it's the same voice. And so Dawes Butler and Don Messick and Mel Blanc. And it took me back to 6 years old or 7, Indian style in front of the TV with a Fruit Loop stuck to my forehead.
Mm-hmm.
And here's a kind of interesting thing. It's not like Brad Pitt or Al Pacino. They were stars to us, but there's an ownership, a powerful ownership from a kid that grows up with those voices and those characters that supersedes ego. You own it. It's sort of like a puppet voice. You own, that's part of my life. And so people aren't reluctant to go, oh, you made such a dent on me. And then plus, nothing takes you back to being a kid faster than the sound of a cartoon voice, because it's really a relationship between you and that character. I don't know how to explain it, but it's a powerful connection. And, of course, there's that added aspect of nostalgia.
Yeah, it's incredible business.
Yeah, it's a very unusual thing. But I didn't really understand the impact or what that did till later. And that's why I understand why people love shows that I never thought were that great, like Rainbow Bright. Oh, huge following. But it's because they were kids, It takes them back to that. And when you're a kid, you don't have critical. You don't go, oh, the show is not quite as evocative as that show. You don't care. I'll tell you another show that I thought was phenomenal, and I haven't watched a lot of my shows. I've probably watched maybe a dozen Ninja Turtle shows out of the 200, and some shows I've not seen any. I figure when I'm really old, I'll sit down and watch everything I ever did and then die. but The Tick, that was a funny show.
Oh, sure.
We had a hoot doing that because it was so funny and it was so weird.
Yeah, we had Townsend Coleman on. He was in that show, too. It seems like you work with some of the same guys throughout the years.
Oh, yeah. See, like I was the Tick, and then lost that because the producer wanted to try it. That didn't work, and Townsend got it. They went back to Townsend rather than me. He was phenomenal at the Tick. He just, when you listen to his performance of that character, it's just great. Sure. Yeah, we worked, a lot of it's like Rob Paulson and I, Bobby's World, 90 episodes of that. We did 200 of Ninja Turtles, other shows together, sometimes 1,000 shows with a few people, Frank Welker and stuff. That's a lot.
Yeah, for sure. That's
more than any series on TV. I mean, you look at Friends and how many shows did they do? Simpsons is, has been going the longest, and I think that's maybe 400 shows now.
Yeah, something like that.
Maybe. Yeah, it's unusual, and you're an ensemble cast. It's not like you go into a TV show and you might see the co-star for about 3 or 4 scenes. No, you're sitting I sat next to Rob Paulson for 9 years, once a week.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
We got to the point we love to ad lib. Rob and I are real up on changing the lines. We got to the point where we would write ad libs for each other, and we'd like on a scrap of paper. Here, Rob, here's your ad lib. Hey, thanks.
Yeah, that's really awesome. You mentioned having an impact on kids, and throughout their childhoods, and even now, you mentioned doing some teaching and kind of passing along some of that stuff that you kind of perfected onto the next generation. So it's
yeah. In fact, I mentioned I started in Australia. Within a week of starting there, I started teaching at the local university. That's where I broke the character voice down because my students insisted on finding out what I was doing with my mouth when I was doing characters. So that I have taught my entire career along with performance. And now, for example, at patfraley.com, I have a free lesson page. You go there, you can get all sorts of lessons without paying anything. Then I also do home course studies at the same website. So people in Illinois, like in DeKalb, can work with me, and I interact with comments on their homework. And so I must have a dozen different courses that are available on character voice, audio books, accents, all sorts of stuff. So it's always been a blessing to be able to pass on stuff. And plus, it makes me better.
Sure.
When you teach, you really, you constantly, do I do this or am I just teaching it? You're constantly tapped on the shoulder.
Yeah, that's awesome. So now I can finally figure out how to do the voice for Baxter Stockman if I just go to your website.
Yeah, exactly. See, Baxter's high, and then I take my forefinger and my thumb, and I pinch a little skin around my throat so I can get, hi, I'm Baxter Stockman. So I can get that fly sound. Yeah, so I teach that, so everybody can do that or cry like a baby. I learned that from Mel Blanc, where you go, but you cover yourself with a little bit of fabric like this. Okay, you guys ready? Here's Jewish Baby.
Excellent.
Oh, man.
That, man.
That is ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. It's like ridiculous. It is totally ridiculous. It's like I get paid for what I learned at recess.
Oh, it's great. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's a joy.
Well, it's been an honor having you on, Pat. Is there anything you got coming up or maybe any projects you want to mention?
No, just the regular ongoing teaching. I never know when I'm going to get hired. I think I have to do, in Kung Fu Panda, is it Shifu, the character that Ian McShane did?
Mm-hmm.
Shifu,
so,
okay,
yeah.
So I'm going to do that. I did it before, and they said, wow, that's so close to his voice. How did you do it? Well, Ian McShane's English, and he's doing an American kind of role, but every so often he makes a mistake. You hear
Sure.
it?
Yep.
So I thought, how can I do that? Oh, I'll just do my bad British and meet him in the middle. So I do this in Lords, and then every so often my British goes into American.
Crazy.
So, I've got that coming up at the end of the week. But other than that, I do movies like I did Box Trolls, Lego Movie. More and more I do these great movies in small parts, whereas in the 80s and 90s I had the lead in really bad animation. It always reminds me of what Sir Alec Guinness, the English actor, said. He said, one becomes knighted so one can go to Hollywood to play butler. So as you get older, I'm just happy that I'm still active and teaching and doing a few roles here and there.
Awesome. Yeah, it's great to hear that you're still working and, teaching everybody else to go on in the future with your techniques.
Yeah, love it.
Well, again, Pat, it's been an honor having you on. You are the voice of a pretty big chunk of our childhood, so we really appreciate your time.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It really is. Love it.
All right. Thanks a lot, Pat.
Thanks a lot, Pat.
You bet.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.